You don't want to join me? Welcome, Autry. I hope everyone is having a great day. Today, I'm going to be reading one of my favorite series by one of my favorite authors. I'm going to read 2 chapters from the very first book. And this is not his popular series. He has a couple, and I've loved almost everything he's written. There's only one book that I did not like, but I love his writing. And he co-wrote this with several people, but he is the main author list. It is Scott Westerfeld. So today I'm going to be reading the first 2 chapters of Zero, which is all about some superpowers. And it's telling me that my connection is unstable. It's probably because my son is up here streaming stuff on his phone. So, all right, it just gave me that message and it's gone away now. So now I'm hoping that it's working okay. All right, so today we're going to be reading Zeros by Scott Westerfeld. Scott Westerfeld is listed on here as one of the authors, along with Margot Lanigan and Deborah Benicati. Okay. Scott Westerfeld, as you may know, also wrote the Uglies series. Uglies, Pretty, Specials, and Extras. Extras is the book I don't really care for. And then he has come out with another series that kind of continues that, but it's different characters and different setting and everything. But it's years after the Ugly series. And that one, I believe, is the Shattered series one. I believe. I've read them. I just can't remember right now off the top of my head. All right. So today I'm going to be reading chapters 1 and chapters 2 because they are relatively short. More coffee? Ethan jumped. It'd been a long night. Okay. The waitress wasn't even listening. The coffee pot dipped toward Ethan's cup, which was fine. The coffee was crap, and he was already wired, but it gave him an excuse to keep sitting there. He'd spent the last 2 hours hunched in a back booth of the Moonstruck Diner, staring out the window at the Cambria Central Bank. It was right across the street, and it opened at 8. Want anything else? The waitress asked. I'm good, thanks. He drank some more coffee. Still crap. At least the bitter Java gave him a reason to seem jumpy. Nobody would look at him and say, hey, that kid's real jumpy. Must have something to do with the army green duffel bag under his feet. Nope. Nobody would blame the bag. He glanced around the diner. Everyone was wrapped in their own 6 a.m. thoughts. Nobody was even looking at him. Okay. One girl was looking at him, but she glanced away like she'd been caught staring. So apart from that one cute girl at the front of the diner, nobody was looking at him. Besides, this was the middle of Main Street. Nobody would come rolling in to seize Ethan and his bag and haul them both out into the dawn. Nothing bad ever happened here in Cambria, California. Population 500,000 during a college term. The diner was filling up with delivery guys on breaks, respectable citizens in suits, and the occasional group of clubbers winding down. All Ethan had to do was watch the bank and wait for the doors to open. Easy, as long as the waiting didn't kill him. More coffee? Seriously, it's been 5 minutes. Can you stop with the coffee? The waitress looked stung. Sorry, Ethan said, but she was already gone. He pulled the duffel bag up and wedged it into a corner of the booth like a makeshift pillow, which was pretty funny given what was in the bag. It was the stuff in the bag that was keeping him awake. That and the people looking for it. He'd always known the voice would do this one day, get him into serious trouble. The voice didn't care about consequences. The voice didn't weigh up the pros and cons. And they say, hey, Ethan, this is how you can get what you want. The voice wasn't sentient like that. It wasn't smart. It didn't negotiate. The voice just went for it. It lied, and most of the time, Ethan didn't even know where the lies came from when they poured out of his mouth. How did the voice know half that stuff? But Ethan had always known that one day he'd pay for all those lies. Right now, he was hoping today was not that day. Chapter 2, it's also titled Scam. I don't know if I told you all that. First chapter was titled Scam. Second chapter is also titled Scam. The evening before had started well. A date with a beautiful woman, a pre-med. It was hyphenated, but it didn't look right. Okay, but it was split on 2 lines. A pre-med student from the north side. Ethan put on his best shirt, a pinstripe button-up his sister had bought him last year, promising it would drive girls crazy. The pre-med girl was way out of his league, even with the shirt, but the voice had talked her into it. He could see her trying to understand it herself. She was at least 4 years older than him, way more sophisticated and much hotter. But every time she seemed uncertain, Ethan would draw her back in, or rather, the voice would. Wondering what the voice is? You'll have to read to find out. It would say just the right thing about midnight art house film they'd seen, or the obscure pre-med stuff she was into, or Ethan's plan to study at the Sorbonne one day. Whatever the Sorbonne was, he didn't even know. But then it got late and exhausting and frankly kind of expensive. He used up all of his cash buying movie tickets and caramel popcorn and drinks from a wine bar so divey that Indira had called it quaint. The wine was $15 a glass. Ethan didn't even like wine. If it had been up to him, he would have scammed his way through the night. The voice was great at getting stuff for free. But Indira clung to Ethan's side, watching his every move like he was some exotic breed she'd never seen before. A teenage kid from the wrong side of town. She probably thought he was quaint too, in a divey way. It was pretty clear that the voice could never convince Indira to do anything more than talk and smile and cling. A nice girl from the north side, she probably wouldn't even make out on a first date. So the voice switched itself to mute while Ethan worked out what he wanted to do next. When he decided all he wanted was to go home, the voice sorted that out too. He left Indira standing by her car in front of the art house cinema. She seemed to glow, lit by the marquee lights announcing a lineup of classic films. Her long summer dress billowed in the night sea breeze. She looked confused by his sudden departure, maybe a little hurt. This blows, Ethan muttered to himself in his real voice. He hated how sad she looked, but he didn't have the energy to turn around. It was all the fault of that stupid art house film. Who knew it could be that boring? Watching it had sucked the life out of him. As Ethan walked away, he rubbed his jaw with the palms of both hands. His muscles always felt weird after a long night of letting the voice talk for him, like he'd been speaking a foreign language. It left a taste in his mouth too, oily charm with notes of crap. It says something else, but that's what Ms. Foster's going to say. The worst part was he had no way home. He was totally out of cash, so a cab was out of the question, and the buses didn't run this late. Indira would have given him a ride, but of course the voice had spun some crap about his vintage Jaguar parked a few streets away just to get rid of her. The voice sucked at planning ahead. The voice just knew when Ethan wanted out. It also liked to twist the knife sometimes. It had claimed the Jaguar was a present from his dad. Yeah, right. Luckily, it was summer, and Cambria's nightclub strip was still in full swing. There were plenty of people to hitch a ride with on Ivy Street. Ethan followed the thudding drumbeat until he reached the crowd. Light spilled from the canopied doorways, and people shouted at each other, deafened by the music that rebounded from the pavement and the warehouse walls. The voice could talk Ethan's way into one of the clubs, but once inside, no, no one would hear him over the music. He'd be just another gawky 17-year-old with a mousy buzz cut and too many freckles. No, what he needed was somebody here, outside. A muddle of tribes skirted each other on ivy. Hipsters and scene kids, crumpled, coked up suits from the stripper bar, a few raver wannabes, and summer outfits showing lots of skin. They were mostly older than Ethan, which meant they mostly had cars. Somebody could be talked into giving him a lift home. Just ahead of him, a guy exited one of the clubs from a side door, which probably meant he was staffed and sober enough to drive. Ethan sped up. The guy walked with a steady purpose. He had an army green duffel bag over one shoulder. Ethan let himself drift into the guy's way until the bag slapped against him. "Hey, watch it," he said in his own voice. The guy spun to face him. He was a few inches shorter than Ethan, but twice as big across the shoulders, and he had no neck. The sort of guy who could crush you with an annoyed glare. His right hand dropped into a jacket pocket like he was ready to pull a knife. "Whoa," Ethan backed away. "My mistake. Sorry about that." The guy scanned Ethan. His eyes were piercing, way too blue, almost electric. But a moment later, he smiled, eased his hand out of his pocket, and gripped Ethan's shoulder. It was like being held up by a wall. "Sorry, man," the guy said, his voice calm and low. "Did I hurt you?" "No problem. You missed, actually." Ethan sputtered, fear beating in his chest. All he wanted was to be on the same side as this guy in his next fight. He let the voice take over. "Taylor sent me over to help you out." That was one of the voice's specialties, names. The big guy paused, looked up at him, and looked him up and down, not smiling anymore. "Taylor sent you?" An edge of disbelief in the low rumble of his voice. "How's a squirt like you gonna help?" Ethan hated when this happened. The voice wouldn't get him into situations that only the voice could get him out of. Then he was stuck, listening and waiting, letting it talk. "Taylor said you were bad off last night. Wasn't sure you'd remember the way to his house." The voice sounded like it was making a joke, so Ethan tried to smile. The guy stared at him another moment, then laughed abruptly, like that was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard. "Oh my goodness, I worked off that hangover in the gym this morning. How do you know Taylor?" "My sister's in his old army unit," Ethan heard himself say and cringed. Thing was, his sister really was in the army. Stuff could go really wrong when the voice told the truth. What if the guy asked for his sister's name? What would the voice say then? But the guy relaxed like he understood everything now. "So your family. Taylor wants you to join the team." Ethan nodded because it seemed like the right thing to do. He said, "I should learn from the best." His voice twisted his throat like it was imitating someone. "Nobody better than Craig." A low thunder of laughter spilled out of the Craig, who reached over and took Ethan's shoulder again. The weight of his hand almost buckled Ethan's knees. "He tell you to say that? What a jerk." He shoved Ethan, sending him stumbling a few steps backwards. "Come on, car's this way." The Craig headed for a side street. Ethan took a breath and followed. Maybe he could still get a ride home out of this. That's the first 2 chapters. I'm tempted to read chapter 3, but I won't. Okay, so what I will do, though, is I'm going to go and read the synopsis. But before I do that, I want to tell you a couple of things. So there were a couple of words in there that probably shouldn't have been said. So there's 2 ways to handle this when it's a library book. One, you can return the book because some of the books, like this one, is considered young adult. And if you're just not ready for it, then you just return it, check it in. And they're mostly for mature 8th grade students and some 7th grade students to read. The other thing you can do is do like I just did, and I skipped over a bunch of them. Or I put a different word in there. I tell my son to do that all the time when he's reading. He'll go, yeah, Mom, there's a cuss word in here. And I'm like, okay, so come up with a different word for it. So for example, there was a different word when Miss Foster said jerk, but I replaced it with jerk in my head and out of my mouth so that I was not saying the bad word that was there. So those are the two things you can do. You can either return the book and save it for a more mature student that you're maybe just not ready for. It's not that you're not mature. You don't want to read books with cuss words in it. I was like that in middle school. I didn't want to read. I still, at my age, don't like books with cuss words in them. So when I get to those cuss words, I typically will replace them with a different word. So you have your two choices. You can return the book, done, or you can replace those words with words that you're more comfortable with. That's what I do. Okay, so I do want to read you the synopsis of this, and I purposefully did not read it before today. So this is the synopsis for Zeros. X-Men meets Marissa Meyer's Renegades when New York Times bestselling author of the Ugly series, Scott Westerfeld, teams up with the award-winning author Margot Lanigan and Deborah Banicotti for this explosive trilogy filled with cinematic nonstop action. Seriously, I've read the whole series. It's true. About 6 teens with unique abilities. Don't call them heroes. But these 6 California teens have powers that set them apart. Take Ethan, aka Scam. That's why chapters 1 and 2 were named Scam, because it's whose point of view you're at. He's got a voice inside him that'll say whatever you want to hear, whether it's true or not, which is handy, except for when it isn't. Like when the voice starts grabbing in the middle of a bank robbery. The only people who can help are the other Zeros, who aren't exactly best friends these days. Enter Nate, aka Bellwether, the group's glorious leader. After Scam's SOS, he pulls the scattered Zeros back together. But when the rescue blows up in their face, the Zeros find themselves propelled into whirlwind encounters with ever more dangerous criminals. At the heart of the chaos, they find Kelsey, who can take a crowd in the palm of her hand and tame it or let it loose as she pleases. Filled with high-stakes action and drama, Zeros unites 3 powerhouse authors for the opening installment of a thrilling new series. And it is very action-packed. You have your heroes, which don't like to be called heroes. They like to be called Zeros, trying to help each other out and to save their town. And so it's a really good series. I highly recommend it. But again, it's for those that are more mature readers, meaning this is a young adult book. So there's some situations and some words in here that some people may not be comfortable with. All right. So Audrey, I hope you have a great day and keep reading. And soon I will be posting information about our summer reading, which will begin on June 1st. Summer reading begins on June 1st, but it doesn't matter. No matter what, every day you should be reading at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes stops the summer slide, and we've already been off a couple of months, kind of, sort of, with digital learning. You're not in school, so we need you to keep reading at least 20 to 30 minutes every day. Have a great day, Audrey, and I will see you tomorrow.